after spending a little bit of time and getting things working, this is where you can begin to delegate, to communicate, to bring direct reports into the loop, to talk to them about how things should work, to get their brains working on, okay, how do we make this work? This is where you can sort of get back to some level of normality in that relationship between senior leader and direct report.
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Rob Smith from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Richard Armisen from Thinking Focus.
The question is, where should a leader focus their attention?
The question is from Thinking Focus, a podcast about how we sometimes get in our own way and what we can do about it.
So, Rich, this is something that's been occupying our thoughts quite a lot recently, is it not?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So senior leaders in a business, there's obviously a slight change in situation right now, as an understatement. And where would it be helpful for us to actually focus our attention right now as leaders?
Well, I think, like you say, it's been on our minds, and we've been talking to a lot of senior leaders and business leaders through the COVID-19 outbreak and how people are reacting to that. And what becomes obvious is that the things that senior leaders were thinking about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, are actually now completely different. Mm-hmm. And I think what we sort of been referring to is a nice little analogy to try and help some of the senior leaders feel comfortable with that. Because some of the ones I've been talking to, Rob, have been saying, I'm really in the detail now, and I never was. Right. I was in a different place, and now I'm really in the detail, and it feels alien. It doesn't feel like I'm, being a senior leader, because I'm really in the weeds. And we certainly been talking to a few of them about thinking about three things in the way that you might spend your time as a senior leader. So, firstly, talking about grow.
Right.
So grow being there's time as a senior leader when you're thinking about, how do we grow the business? What's the long-term view? What's the long-term strategy? What's the horizon scanning? And quite often, if you're a senior leader, you spend a good chunk of your time in this space. So that's grow.
Right.
Then we've been talking about run being the second step. So run, I guess your question probably, Robbie, so what's that then? so run is, so how do we run the business on a day-to-day basis? What operationally do we need to be doing? Where are we doing it? How are we doing it? That sort of stuff. And that typically is an area where senior leaders have got lots of direct reports, got lots of managers that are doing that for them.
Right, which is not their normal right now, right? Which is causing them to think differently, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. And the third area, which senior leaders would not normally spend very much time in at all in a good established business, is what we've been calling protect.
Right.
So protect being something that lots and lots of businesses have had to do very recently is, how do we protect the business? How do we make sure we have a business? How do we keep the lights on type of stuff? And I think that area in particular is where a lot of senior leaders' focus suddenly went from maybe even 3, 4, 5 years out suddenly to, next week, next month. And that's a massive shift.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, an element to that is that's a really natural thing to do from an organizational point of view, but not necessarily natural as an individual, because that's not really how we're geared as senior leaders to suddenly go into that mode, protect mode.
Yeah, I think for some it becomes ironically, I think for some it's really easy, because I imagine people listening to this can think about a senior leader that they work with or have worked with that they just cannot get out of their detail and is in the way every day. For some will have found it really easy. In fact, will have really enjoyed it. Some will have found it really hard because they're very used to being, looking at the long-term view. So they will have found it very difficult and quite uncomfortable to be in that place. And I think it's also it's no one else that's going to be doing that, really.
Right.
If you think about a successful, vibrant business, actually, you're not really thinking about protect.
No.
But all of a sudden, even for successful, vibrant businesses, you are or have been thinking about protect. What does this mean? So it's an unusual place for people to find themselves.
Sure, absolutely. Because you would, in normal circumstances, be expecting sort of leadership thinking to be more focused around a strategic type of thought process, more in the grow. A managerial or tactical way of thinking is more in the run.
Yeah.
And protect is something that, we sort of almost hope and pray that we don't have to necessarily think about. We check in with now and again, but we don't have to spend too much time there. And so now, as you're describing it, that thinking or that way of thinking needs to be reversed, because actually we're in survivor mode right now, right? We need to protect what we've got.
Yeah, I think as well, naturally, from a personality perspective, you tend to find that you get pessimists and optimists as well. So you may have some senior leaders who are more pessimistic, that think about these things quite regularly, but you may get some that are very optimistic that would never go there and would never think about the stuff, and suddenly found themselves doing it. The interesting part, I think, is that once you've done some protect thinking and you work out, okay, so how do we keep the lights on? How do we keep the business functioning? How do we move everybody to work at home? How do we make sure that works? All that sort of stuff. You quickly realize that, okay, maybe generalizing, but maybe you got a business that says, well, revenues are not going to be the same, but actually we can stabilize good few months. It's going to be okay. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's okay. So the protection piece is done almost.
Okay.
You've got to keep your eye on it. But then you move into run the business. So how do we run this thing? As I was just saying, how do you run it remotely? How do we equip everyone to do that? How do we talk to customers? The interesting thing, some of the challenges from the senior leaders I've been talking to have come in this space, not in the protect space.
Right.
But in the run space. And they've come because they've suddenly found that they've got a whole raft of direct reports that
are no longer available.
well, they might not be. They may have been furloughed in some cases, absolutely. Yeah. Or they may be saying, some of those direct reports may be saying, well, hang on a minute, this is my job to do this, and now you're doing it and trying to sort it out. So you get a little clash in the run space, which again is difficult.
Sure, and there's some practical applications in that as well, because even if that's my job, if that managerial sort of conversation is happening, it's being done in a different way, because there's an element to what's happening right now where a lot of the day-to-day is having to be done remotely. It's not being done almost in, the standard conversations that we would typically have in a workplace, where it's corridor conversations or, running in to go and speak to Rich for 5 minutes into his office. None of that, all that now needs to be organized in an online type of forum.
Yeah. So those natural conversations aren't there. And I think you've probably got as well with people working remotely, you've got a lot more time to sit and think and ponder things. Right. And you may have direct reports sitting thinking, well, what's my role now? Because some of the things I was doing have now disappeared. And again, I think it's very natural for senior leaders. The businesses, we've done the protect bit. We're now in the run bit. It's here where if senior leaders stay in this space too long, that can become demotivating for staff. So I think it's here where, after spending a little bit of time and getting things working, this is where you can begin to delegate, to communicate, to bring direct reports into the loop, to talk to them about how things should work, to get their brains working on, okay, how do we make this work? This is where you can sort of get back to some level of normality in that relationship between senior leader and direct report. The temptation for many that I've been talking to is to stay in this space and keep their eye on all the detail. And we totally get that. It's understandable. But it can be demotivating if people that would normally do this stuff, if the direct reports are not given some responsibility here.
Right. And I mean, what's the other risk, Rich, if leaders stay in run for too long? What other risks are there?
Yeah, good question. Because of course, there's a risk that if we stay there too long, then we haven't got our eye on the horizon.
Okay. So the business could be at risk here. We could miss out on emerging opportunities, or miss out on the right focus for us to, if we have to turn or twist or make a change to the way the organization is running.
Yeah, so we might we might not have our attention on the future and opportunities if we're too in the detail. So that's why it's important, I think, for senior leaders to step out of this after they've got a level of comfort, and That's not always easy for all of them. I think the challenge about the grow piece is that now, because there's so little certainty with COVID-19 around what the economic climate will look like, what the future will look like, there's so little certainty, it's difficult. Some of the leaders I've been talking to, they're finding it very difficult to think long term because they just don't know what long term's going to be. I was talking to one last week that we work with really closely, and he said there's always some sort of framework of what the future will look like in their industry. He said, but now there's nothing. So he said, I've got to think about it, but there's nothing there. I've got to make it up, and I don't know if that's right or not right. And so actually, it's very difficult. So it's easy to stick to what you know, stick to the certainty that you've got. But actually, it's also very important as we come through this. It'd be really important, like for the guy I was talking to last week, to imagine some sort of future and to try and shape the future in the industry that he works in, so the business can adapt and be at the forefront like it has been.
Yeah. In consultation with others, and I mean, I'm thinking about outside of the business here as well, because what we might have happening in our business as a leader may be very seriously impacted on our supply chain, on our customer base, because the changes that they might be going through or have gone through as a result of the situation that we're currently in has a direct impact on us.
And for some senior leaders, trying to get this view of longer term at the moment is difficult because they might not be able to get access to some of their customers. Right. Some of the customers might not be working. Some of the stakeholders might be, difficult to get hold of at the moment. For others, it'll be easier, and they're talking all the time, and they can perhaps start to imagine that. But so that place of grow is very difficult. Right. But it's almost, though, actually, that's where senior leaders really earn the money. Yes, is in that space. Yes, and whilst the shift of attention back to protect absolutely necessary and into run absolutely necessary, as we come out of this, the senior leaders will earn the money by starting to imagine what a new future might look like and will look like for their organisation. Yeah, and creating that if they need to create it, because other people will be looking for that certainty themselves. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. So just as a reminder, the question that we've just discussed, where should a leader focus their attention? Grow, run, protect as three sort of areas of focus. And less certainty in the world changes the focus for leaders. We need to concentrate on those three steps. Thanks, Rich. Thank you, Rob.
Next time on The Question Is.
Clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And when you actually think about it, if we don't know what's expected, how can we be confident we're going to get what we want?
Thinking Focus works with teams and business units in organizations around the world, helping them achieve breakthroughs by enabling them to think differently. To find out more about our work and how we could help your organization, go to www.thinkingfocus.com.